So this wasn't a review I initially planned to do. I was going to wait for my weekly wrap-up to discuss it because I didn't think there would be much to say. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. I'm pretty high on the previous trilogy, and Rise is probably one of my favorite slow burn movies of the 2010s. Now, I know it doesn't have as much replay value as the other movies, but I still think in a vacuum, it's still the one for me. By the way, if you want my full thoughts on the trilogy, they were part of my weekly wrap-up 2 weeks ago, so go check that out. And maybe, just subscribe so you could just see it anyway. Why not do that? Make things easier. Kill two birds with one stone. Now, to get into Kingdom, I think objectively, this is the best all-around POA film, and I'm going to be saying POA a lot. Just know POA means Planet of the Apes. I just don't feel like saying Planet of the Apes all the time because I'm lazy and POA just sounds cleaner. I think objectively this is the best all-around POA film we've gotten since the reboot. And I say since the reboot because I haven't watched the older ones to say if they are better than this current iteration that we have, so I just don't want to just misstep like that and just misspeak. I haven't seen them. Will I see them at some point? Sure. I'm gonna just say sure because I just don't know. They're not on my radar to watch anytime soon though, so take that with what you will. Now, I think the criticisms people may have, which would be warranted, don't take away from the overall experience of the movie. Now, I think with a movie like this in a universe like this, a big thing for it to accomplish early on is to immerse you in this world. If it doesn't accomplish that, I feel like a lot of times movies like this that are so bombastic in its storytelling and what it's trying to present, if you don't kind of get us immersed and get us to believe in this world that you're trying to create, is going to leave kind of a lot to be desired for people. And from the opening sequence that involves characters that we end up seeing throughout the movie, they do a great job of quickly showing each of their traits while also giving us a look at what a post-apocalyptic Earth generations after a collapse would be. Which, by the way, the set pieces were just fine. Nothing really blew me away like, whoa, I've never seen that for a post-apocalyptic world, which, it's not the end-all be-all, but, just wanted to point that out. But speaking of not blowing me away, the main character Noah was also kind of just meh for me. I think he suffered from being around way more interested in complex characters, so that didn't help with his pretty generic son of a leader backstory that we've seen across many forms of media, not even just in like action storytelling, things like this. So you can all recall maybe a movie or two, or even a show or two, where the backstory is there's the kid that's the son of a leader that he's trying to live up to, like, one of the greatest ones that we could think of recently. And I hate to be the person that always reference things to anime because I sound like a weeb when I do this, but Boruto is like a big example of, son of a leader type of backstory, wanting to prove yourself. That's kind of the story that Noah is on, Noah being the main character of, seeming to be the main character of this new trilogy. Like, one of the first side characters we get on Noah's journey is an orangutan that was part of a group of wise apes whose purpose was to maintain Caesar's actual way of belief and had knowledge of how humans operated generations ago before the collapse occurred. He even wore a necklace that had a symbol in the shape of the window in Caesar's home back in the first movie. Like, talk about world building. Then we have Proximus, my favorite character in the movie, personally speaking, who's probably the most, in love with humans and is fascinated by the Roman Empire of humanity, but to be more specific, hence why he has the name Proximus, which means nearest or next, which explains why in the movie he goes by Proximus Caesar. He's kind of trying to reference himself as like being the next Caesar, the newest Caesar, which obviously Caesar, that name in itself, also has a lot of Roman Empire ties. You can kind of see the, the correlations going on there. This movie also does kind of suffer from the usual issue most people have with the first installment of what's already going to be a multi-movie story, that being that it lacks any real stakes and almost feels like it's only here to set up the story as opposed to telling its own. Although that last part I would maybe disagree with because there is somewhat of a completion with this movie as opposed to something like Across the Spider-Verse, which literally ends right where it seems like the next Spider-Verse movie is going to kick off from. This one at least has somewhat of a conclusion, and it seems like the next movie could take place maybe a year or two after, 3-4 years. It's not like something where we're going to immediately jump right into the second movie. It's almost like I almost have to watch the second or third or fourth one to even enjoy what that first one was really offering me. Now, the story itself in this movie isn't anything fancy. It's essentially about Noah finding his purpose and becoming the ape I guess he's meant to be, and it takes for a lot of unfortunate and dicey situations for him to get to that point. But watching him learn about everything in the past and watching it slowly shape his ideologies was definitely done well. You can literally see him get smarter and more aware scene by scene, and coupling that with Proximus twisting the words of the original Caesar and seeing how this new king was operating as a tyrant made for a great yin and yang. Because you see both Proximus and now Noah are aware of Caesar's beliefs, beliefs, but seeing how both of them go on the opposite ends on how they want to instill them was a fun little ping pong game in the third act. I also should talk about the girl, right? I mean, she's pretty important, I would say. She was great and probably the perfect human representation you can have for a movie like this. She did a good job of coming off how a human would in her situation and never felt over the top. Plus, I was actually invested in her story and wanted to see how she would end up. And as it stands towards the end of the movie, I'm still pretty indifferent on her role and how it'll play out in the future because they didn't really dive too deep into her lore. We just got surface level information, like what happened to her, why she was there, what's her purpose. We got like an end off point of where she was ending up at and kind of what her real mission was in this movie, I guess. But other than that, we don't really know too much about her as a person on like a deep level, which I think is very clearly on purpose. And maybe the second movie she'll get more characterization, which I would be down for because I definitely am very interested in her character and just, you know, how she went from where she was at in point A to where she first arrived to where she's at the very end of the movie. I just would love to learn more about her as a character, which obviously had to sign of a good character. So overall, I'm pretty high on this movie. POA continues to not miss, and based off this first entry in the new trilogy, I think we're in for a very compelling story across 3 movies. I just pray we don't have to wait for the third one for things to get wild, because based on the ending, things are definitely going to get wild, which is a good transition into spoiler talk. But before that, grade rating is an easy B+. This is for sure a must watch even if you're the most casual movie enjoyer. I think this movie is a fun time. This is like the movie you can take like your grandparents who don't know anything about anything and just take them to the movies and they'll be thoroughly entertained. Kids are gonna love it because it's monkeys talking. Older people are gonna love it because it feels like it's a real story and it's like, oh, I've never seen anything like this. Or maybe they're gonna reminisce about the older movies. And obviously like the average, 20, 30 some year old is gonna watch this and just kind of shut their brain off and just look at monkeys talk and just act like people and just be like, whoa, this is interesting. So this is just like a fun overall blockbuster experience, I think, for all ages. So getting into spoiler talk, I guess we should start with the ending, right? Now, while I haven't watched the older movies, I am aware of what occurs in them, and with the ending we got, it's safe to say that astronauts are on the menu. Now, as far as I'm aware and can recall, because I did watch the trilogy like a few weeks ago, there were no references to astronauts in the previous trilogy, and I'm sure we'll get a flashback that'll show it occurring, but what I'm most interested in this is how it'll intertwine with what's already currently going on, because there is potential, no matter how small or big you think it is, that they fumble this angle and it completely cripples the good fortune they've built, and POA gets looked at like, why did they choose that angle? And yes, I get it, they did it before, but these are different times in a different era with a different storyline. We're just in a different climate right now. Just because it worked back then does not mean it'll work now. Also, can we please get some interactions with the primitive humans and the ones that never seem to regress as well? I think that could be very, very special. This is like one of the few universes where you can pull that off without time travel being involved, and crazy enough, some can be direct descendants of each other. And I get it, this is more of me just speaking personally, but I just would love to see how a primitive human would look like coming across these humans that seem to have bunkered down and never lost hope and are still, like how we are as humans now, just seeing them interact and kind of like talk to each other, and or at least attempt to talk to each other, try to pick their brains and try to see if they're gonna maybe try to teach them things if they already know about these primitive humans, and they kind of look at them with a bad taste in their mouth, like they don't even want to acknowledge them. They view them as like lost causes. Like, I just really would love to see that. I know this is a Planet of the Apes series, I know this is about apes, but I just would love to see that interaction between a human that has been kind of aware of what's been going on and a human that just kind of regressed over time and now is kind of back in like a primitive state, like I said, back in like the Stone Age. I just think that is just a very, very interesting interaction they have, just like really served up on a silver platter for them. I just hope at some point we at least get a nibble of it. Just a nibble. That's all I really want. Just a nibble. Because I just really have this weird feeling that this is an angle that they're going to ignore, and if they do, it's going to make my heart pretty sad. I'm not going to lie to y'all. But that is going to do it for the video. I did not want to talk about this for too long because I still am kind of festering it in my mind. I just saw it like a day ago, so still a couple things that I have to maybe sit on a little bit. But I did want to get some general thoughts out there because I did think it was special enough to warrant its own video. Very high on this movie. Really love it. Like I said, B+. Think you should go watch it if you haven't already. Obviously, if you're watching this review and you're at this point where I already talked about spoilers, you probably have already seen it, but it was a phenomenal movie. They're building out such a great universe with Planet of the Apes. It is nice to know that there's at least one franchise out right now that I can consistently look forward to and know that they're going to continuously drop banger after banger. But until my next video, I will see you guys when I see you guys, which will be tomorrow actually. So Yeah, see you tomorrow. And yeah, remember to eat your veggies. Or maybe, I guess today, because by the time I upload this, people are probably not even going to watch it until Saturday. And by Saturday, I'm going to upload the 2000s Kid Core video. So yeah, it gets weird, you know, YouTuber lifestyle. I kind of never know when I'm talking to you, at what point I'm talking to you. I might be talking to you from 4 months ago. Like, this might be 4 months in the future and you're finally watching this video. It's funny how internet works, right? See you in the next one.